Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Please reach out to me directly. I am tmosso@thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. Today we're discussing a watch launched as you see it here in 2021. This is the latest version of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore Diver, reference 15720ST, 42 millimeters in diameter. The watch is 14.3 millimeters thick. From lug tip to lug tip, it is 54.2 millimeters, and from end length to end length, total rigid distance across the wrist is a meaty 58.8 millimeters. So let's see on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist whether this watch wears as large as those dimensions suggest. Now, I can feel, due to the angle of the lugs, you see how they're angled down, as well as the flexibility of the rubber strap, I could wear this watch on a 16 centimeter circumference wrist, but I'm going to recommend you consider this like a 44 millimeter round watch, because that's really how it wears. This wears like a 44. If you would normally wear a 44, game on. If you would normally not wear a 44, you're going to want to find a smaller watch, maybe a standard Royal Oak. Down the barrel one more time, and the cuff shot. The strap is robust. You can see it is the current version of the diver strap. It has a little bit of a matte granular profile to it. You can see the texture at close range, as well as character lines molded in. My favorite is that we have a little continuation of the case bevel that runs through the initial shoulder of the strap. Now, while it might look like this is all being held on using screws and bars, in fact, there's a quick release system that employs two triggers underneath. This is one of the characteristics of the latest generation of Royal Oak Offshores. This gives you the option to use a lot of AP factory straps, and due to the popularity of the Royal Oak Offshore, I would not be shocked if eventually there are also custom-made aftermarket options that are able to accommodate this system. So if you want to make some changes aesthetically or just clean the case closely, you can always use that. And because a quick release strap wouldn't be helpful if the buckle were left stranded on the strap, this stainless steel, media blasted, satinated, and polished pin buckle does actually have a release mechanism, and you can see it in profile how that works. So the buckle will pop off the strap without tools. Taking a look at the case, this is one of the pleasing elements of every Royal Oak and Offshore, the complexity of the finishing. We have micro beveling here on the crown guards. We have a high degree of finish, not just on metal parts, but also ceramic. As you can see, the shoulder to the crown features an outer face that's polished, and then facets that are satinated. It is a screw-down crown. The watch is 300 meters water resistant. You can see the differential finish, satin and polish on the crown that operates the internal bezel. The case itself features an expanding bevel over the lug hoods, longitudinal satination, as well as across the lug hoods. The bezel has a vertical face with satination, a sloped, rounded profile and polish, and then the top has been vertically satinated. We also have inset hexagonal stainless steel bolts, and they are bolts. That's how they can be aligned all the way around. That same hexagonal form used for the shoulder of the crown and the shoulder of the bezel crowns. This is how the bezel works. Before we jump to that, let me show you something real quick. See how the inner bezel is blue? That is an accenting color on the watch. That is why you can see the bezel gasket is also blue. On the Royal Oak Offshore, unlike the standard Royal Oak, the gasket is much more prominent, and it serves as a complementary styling feature to the lines and the overall design. So it's a complementary color, and it's a visible structural component of the watch. Okay, the dial, gray, sport gray, as Audemars Piguet would have you say. We have that screw-down crown for the bezel. Now you can see how the bezel operates internally. It rotates in one direction. It ratchets when you turn the crown in the other direction. Line up the minute hand with the index. Now you've got an impromptu 0 to 60 minute count up timer, so it'll count up to 60 minutes just like that. We'll do a loom shot so you can see that better. Here you can see that the bezel is loomed all the way around, making it easier to read the minute hand against the index of the bezel to keep track of elapsed time in the dark. And there's a feature here that you should see on every diver. Sadly, they don't all have a luminescent seconds hand. It's really important to know whether your watch is running during a dive and perhaps just before a night dive, and the loomed seconds hand gives you that functionality, so I'm happy to see that there. The dial includes a bezel that acts as a flange. It's a rejo as well as a internal bezel. We have the large hobnail with gloss grace. The large hobnail is called Mega Tapisserie. And then we have applique indices, handset and AP logo, all rhodium-plated white gold. And because this isn't a modular complication, the date's not buried in a tunnel. So you actually see there's a magnifier built into the dial, and then we have the date, and it's really quite easy to see. So that's a distinct change from the historic feature of Royal Oak Offshore chronographs. One thing I do want to show you here, the font used on, let me go to 12 here. The font used on the date disc is the same font used for the bezel numerals. And that's a mistake that a lot of companies make, where the numerals don't all have the same font or the text doesn't all have the same font. That's not an oversight you'll find with Audemars Piguet. By the way, you saw the quick set system for the date. Now you can see the hacking or stop seconds system that allows you to set the watch against a reference time. On the reverse side, we have Audemars Piguet manufacturer caliber. This is the 4308. 4308 is an automatic winding caliber with a 60-hour power reserve. It's larger than the previous in-house 3120. The 3120 was tiny at only 26.6 millimeters. This is 32 millimeters, so it better fills out the case back. It's got 60 hours of power reserve. It beats away at a higher beat rate than the old 3120. That movement was 3 hertz. This is 4 hertz, which is more appropriate to a sports watch. You could see that it pivots on 32 jewels. It has a blackened gold multiply finished rotor that runs on ceramic bearings for high efficiency. For shock resistance, we have a full balance bridge and a free sprung balance, and the movement isn't too thin. You always want a sports watch movement to be a little bit thick, and I believe this one's over 5 millimeters, so that's exactly what you want to see. Finishing is mostly mechanical, though handsomely executed. You can see there's a particularly good shading gradient across the stripes, which I love to see. And I believe that the rotor, as is often the case on automatic Audemars Piguet watches, it's finished to a somewhat higher manual standard of execution than the bridges and plates themselves, but it's a good-looking movement that properly fills the case back and technologically updates the Royal Oak Offshore diver for the first time in a long time, so very happy to see that. A big part of what you pay for with an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore is technological innovation. And while this doesn't break any new frontiers or advance the state of the art, the fact that there is a new quick release system for the strap, a redesigned dial, a reconsidered case finishing, a new buckle, a new movement that's larger and more capable. This is a watch that's keeping up with the times and maybe even staying slightly ahead of the competition, as I can't think of any equivalent Hublot I'd rather own in the dive segment than this. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.